Hi everyone, my name is Huey Han. I am a product manager at Amazon Web Services, and my partner here is Neha, who's going to introduce herself a little bit later in her section of the presentation. Today, we're really excited to be here, and we're going to talk to you about the best practices for configuring replications. So just a quick overview of what we're going to cover today. First, we're going to talk about, give you an overview of S3 replications, what it is, what it can do, the various features we offer. Then we're going to dive a little bit deeper into this one particular feature called S3 replication time control. We're going to talk to you about some customer use cases for replication. And then we're going to introduce you to this new exciting feature we just launched called multi-region access points. We're going to show you a demo of how to configure S3 replications and multi-region access point. And then we're going to wrap it up with some summary and questions. Awesome. So first, let's take a look at an overview of Amazon S3 replication. So let's take a quick look at S3 replications. S3 replication is an elastic, fully managed, low-cost feature that automatically replicates objects between buckets. Replication offers a ton of flexibility via a very rich set of features, which we'll go over just in a bit. And these set of features allow you to configure wherever and however you want to replicate. In order to get started with replication, you first set up a replication rule. And in this rule, you define various parameters such as the source bucket and the destination bucket. Source bucket being where you replicate object from, and destination bucket being where you replicate object to. Once a rule is set up, S3 replication automatically replicate objects in the source bucket, and additionally, metadata as well. So it's a completely managed hands-off feature where you don't have to think about it once you have configured the replication rule. So S3 replication gives you a lot of flexibility when deciding how you replicate. The source and destination bucket can both be in the same AWS region, or they can be in different AWS region. You can replicate from one source bucket to multiple destination buckets. You can also replicate cross-account, so replicating between buckets owned by different AWS accounts. What's really powerful is that you can mix and match these rules. So for example, you can have one source bucket replicating to multiple destinations, and some of the destinations are in the same region, some in a different region, and some are also owned by a different account. So to make this happen, you just need to configure your replication once to specify all these parameters. And once again, once the rules are configured, you don't have to think about it. S3 will follow the complex rule set that you've configured and replicate the objects for you automatically. So besides the flexibility we just mentioned, S3 replication also offers ability to further configure your replications. First, you can replicate your objects into a different storage class. So for example, from S3 standard in your source bucket, you can replicate objects into S3 Glacier or S3 Glacier Deep Archive in your destination bucket. This can be particularly powerful when you are using replication for disaster recovery and resiliency purposes, where you are not expecting to really do a lot of read from the secondary copy, but just want to keep it as a backup. And replicating your objects into Glacier or Glacier Deep Archive can help you save a lot of cost. The second is bidirectional replication. So with this feature, replication is not just one direction from source to destination, but rather bidirectionally, meaning changes happen to the destination bucket will also be replicated back to the source bucket. This feature can be really useful when you have write workloads on both your source and destination buckets, and you want to keep data consistent between them. And the last feature we want to call out is metrics and notification. This is a feature that once enabled will help you monitor replication progress, including replication latency, how many bytes are pending replication, and how many operations are pending replication. It's really useful when you want to have granular visibility into replication progress. So we've talked a lot about what S3 replication is, what it can do, and different features and configurations we offer. Let's now take a look at some of the use cases of replications. First, S3 replication can be used for compliance. And we see a lot of these in finance and healthcare industry, where customers have business requirements to maintain multiple copies of the data, either across geographies or in one particular geography. Replication offers a AWS managed way to help customers maintain these copies. Second use case is resiliency. So you can use S3 replication to maintain a secondary copy of your critical data in a region different from your primary AWS region in case of failure with your primary region. Third is performance. So we see an increasing trend from customers where applications today are global scale and serving users across geographies. Having replications can help you maintain copies of data in different geographies, and this can make sure that your users can access a bucket that's closest to them, and therefore reducing latencies and optimizing for performance. And lastly, the use case is ownership. So you can use cross-account replications to have the same data under different ownerships. And we see this often in vendor relationship, where you and your vendor might want to maintain the same copy of data, but under different ownerships. So now let's take a look, dive a little bit deeper into one particular feature we offer called replication time control. And I will hand it off to Neha.
Thanks, Huey. Hey everyone, I'm Neha Tyagi and I'm Software Development Manager, AWS S3. So without further ado, let's talk about this important feature of replication called replication time control, or S3 RTC in short. S3 RTC helps you meet compliance or business requirements for your data replication. Typically, S3 RTC replicates most objects that you upload to Amazon S3 in seconds, and 99.99% of those objects within 15 minutes. S3 RTC is backed by an SLA that states customers will be eligible to get a service credit in the event that Amazon S3 does not meet the feature commitment of replicating 99.99% of objects within 15 minutes. By default, you get metrics and notifications along with S3 RTC, so you can have visibility into the replication progress. I can enable RTC when I create a new replication rule, and I can also add it to an existing rule. We will go over it in the demo later. Okay, let's talk about benefits of RTC. We have seen many different use cases for S3 RTC across financial services and other industries. Customers use S3 RTC for the time-based guarantee on replication, as it's backed by SLA. It helps them meet compliance requirements and also report out their recovery point objectives at a minute-level granularity. All right, let's talk about the metrics and RTC. S3 RTC helps customers monitor their replication progress and tracks which operations, if any, are replicated after the 15-minute threshold. Here on this graph, you see all the replication metrics that come by default with replication time control. Bytes pending replication jumps up right after the upload and then drops down as replication takes place. Operations pending count tracks the number of objects to be replicated. If you look closely on the replication latency graph on the bottom right here, you'll see how the value peaks in between the replication progress and then falls back down to 0 when the source and destination buckets are in sync. You can also view these metrics on CloudWatch now. Okay, now let's talk about the events. S3RTC has 3 primary events, and customer can monitor these events through Amazon SQS, Simple Queue Service, Simple Notification Service, SNS, and AWS Lambda. The 3 events we want to highlight are Operation Failed Replication, Operation Missed Threshold, and Operation Replicated After Threshold. In this slide, we will demonstrate how a customer might use Operation Missed Threshold and Operation Replicated After Threshold to monitor their RPO. Let's say we upload an object in the bucket at 9 a.m. In some unlikely event that we do not replicate it to the destination region within 15 minutes, at 9:15, Amazon S3 will emit Operation Missed Threshold. Then we will throw another event to let you know when we come back into compliance. So in this case, when object replicates to the destination by 9:18, Amazon S3 will emit a new event, Operation Replicated After Threshold. And this will be at 9:18 here. And again, you can publish these events using either SQS, SNS, or even by invoking a Lambda. You can use these events to monitor adherence to the SLA. For example, you could store replication time missed threshold and replication time completed after threshold events in a database somewhere. So to track occasions where replication took longer than expected. The first event here, replication missed threshold, will tell you that the replication is running late. And the second event, replication time completed after threshold, will tell you that it has completed and how late it was. Okay, now to talk about customer use cases, I'll invite Huey back. Over to you, Huey.
Thanks, Neha. So now we're going to talk about some of the customer use cases for replications. So first, let's take a look at an example where we have a travel industry customers and they have a data protection and archival requirements and want to have a secondary copy of their critical data. So how do they configure their replication? First, they chose cross-region replications to replicate data into a different AWS region. This is to meet their disaster recovery requirements, where in case there's a region failure with your primary regions, they still have the backup data in the secondary region. Additionally, you would also notice that they chose cross-account replications. So the current set of applications and users don't have access to the secondary copy. And this is to prevent unintended access from application and users associated with the source account. And this further enhances your data protection objective. Furthermore, this customer would like to monitor replication progress, so they chose to enable replication metrics and events. And once again, remember that metrics and events that customers, once enabled, can monitor a few things: bytes pending replications, replication latencies, and number of operations pending replications. Lastly, these customers also want to optimize for storage costs. So what they did is they used prefix-based rules to replicate some of the production data into S3 standard storage and the remaining data into S3 Glacier storage class. So prefix-based replication rule is a very useful feature that gives you granular control on what to replicate. And for this customer, data that does not need to be accessed but still need to be retained are in the /archive prefix, and these data go into S3 Glacier for cost optimization. So let's look at another example. We have a media streaming customers that wants to use S3 replications to build multi-region availability for their users. They want users in Asia Pacific to be able to access a bucket close to them, so that these users don't have to access the bucket in US East. And by doing so, this customer can reduce latency for their users in Asia. And to achieve that, they set up cross-region replication with the destination bucket in AP Northeast 1. Additionally, they also have a disaster recovery objective to replicate their production data to another regions for better data production purposes. And for these, they choose to replicate to US West 1 with a different region from their primary regions for better resiliencies. Furthermore, this customer wants to optimize for cost. So for the AP Northeast 1 bucket, where the customer expects their users to do reads on the data, they opt to use intelligent tiering. So for those of you who might not be familiar with it, intelligent tiering is an S3 storage class designed for customers who want to optimize storage costs automatically when data access patterns change. Intelligent tiering automatically saves costs by moving data between two access tiers, frequent access and infrequent access. And these automatic change is based on the access patterns that intelligent tiering monitors for you. In our case, what intelligent tiering allows a customer to do is to ensure the bucket has low latency access since it's close to the end user, but yet still retaining some of the cost optimization capability by allowing intelligent tiering to shift data between the frequent access and infrequent access tiers. And for the other destination bucket in US West 1, because it's for data protection purposes and the customer does not expect read workload on this bucket, so the customer decided to use Glacier Deep Archive to reduce storage cost. Lastly, customer wants to have predictable replications for their destination bucket that has the high read workload. So they set up replication time control. And note that by default, enabling replication time control also enables customers to monitor replication progress through metrics and notifications. For the other destination bucket, however, since it's for archival reasons, the customer doesn't need such predictability with the replication and therefore left it as default replication and not replication time control. So we just went over a ton of materials. Let's take a step back and check some of the points we talked about. So we're going to ask you a few questions and give you some time to think about the answers before we reveal the answers. First question is, will metadata be replicated? The answer is yes. This is one great thing about replication is that it not only replicates the object content, but also the object metadata. So the replicated object in the destination bucket is an exact replica of the object in your source bucket. Second question, can destination object storage class differ from the source? The answer again is yes. You can replicate from, let's say, for example, standard storage class to Glacier or Glacier Deep Archive. And once again, this is really powerful if you want to optimize for cost. Third questions, can you replicate to more than one destination bucket? The answer again is yes, you can. And we see this a lot of use cases with multi-region storage customers where using one source bucket, they can replicate to multiple geography across the globe. Next question, can modification to destination objects sync back to the source objects? The answer is yes. We have a fantastic feature called bidirectional replication that allows you to do just that. Last question. What events does S3 replication time control emit? So replication time control has three primary events: operations fail replications, operation miss thresholds, and operation replicated after threshold. So the first, once again, the event operation fail replication is you get the event if S3 failed to replicate some objects due to configuration issues, for example. The second event, operation miss threshold, is if S3 replicated objects after the 15 minutes SLA. And then operation replicated after threshold is that for those objects that miss the threshold initially, when they are eventually replicated, you will also get an event notification. Awesome. So let's move on to the next section. We're going to talk about S3 multi-region access point. So in our very last example, we talked about customers using S3 replication to build a multi-region storage solution. And in fact, at S3, this is the trend we're increasingly seeing from our customers, where customers want to store their data in multiple AWS regions. And the motivating reasons for this trend are a few fold. Many of the benefits of multi-region storage are the same as what we discussed for replication. So performance, resiliencies, and compliance. But while there are many benefits of multi-region storage, building application on top of multi-region storage historically has been challenging. It requires custom and regional logics that routes requests to the closest bucket. And if you implement more advanced traffic management, such as failover or latency-based routing, the logic becomes even more complex to build and maintain. So this is where multi-region access point come in. It's a new feature we recently launched in September. What multi-region access point are is a new type of global endpoint for S3 that can be created in front of multiple buckets in different AWS regions. The multi-region access point is not tied to a specific AWS region, but rather a unique global hostname. This unique global hostname serves as a single endpoint for all the underlying buckets. This means each multi-region access point can be used in front of multiple buckets without having to hard code your client or applications to a particular bucket in a single region. Under the hood, the multi-region access point is a routing features that automatically routes to the lowest latency region for uploads or downloads, and always keep the request on the AWS global network, regardless if the request is internet-based, VPC-based, or from on-premises networks. And for those of you who might not be familiar with it, AWS Global Accelerator is a networking service that improves the performance of your users' traffic by up to 60% using AWS Global Network Infrastructure. Multi-region access point, what it does is that it vastly simplifies the development and maintenance of multi-region application for you. Since you can direct requests to this one multi-region access point endpoint and have S3 do all the hard work of routing and optimizing latency for you. With that in mind, the process to set a multi-region access point is really easy. First, you can create a multi-region access point in front of one or more S3 buckets. And this can be done with a few clicks in the S3 management console or with a single CLI command. Once a multi-region access point has been created, you can configure permission, public access, and replication if you desire. And after the setup, requests made to a multi-region access point global hostname are routed and served by the bucket with the low-end latencies. So one thing we want to mention is that S3 replication of multi-region access point is a powerful combination. Multi-region access point is very integrated with S3 replication to provide maximum flexibility when choosing what to replicate and to which destinations. So replication rules can be set up on the bucket directly outside of the multi-region access point, or you can also use a provided template shortcut to set up the replication rules within the multi-region access point console. And either way is fine, and all the exciting features we discussed, such as multi-destination replication, bidirectional replication, they're all supported by either user flow. And additionally, S3 replication time control can be a great addition to multi-region access point, since you can have a SLA-backed replication agreement that provides predictability. So, as mentioned, you can configure replication within multi-region access point. And we provide two templates. One is replicate from one source bucket to destination buckets. And the second is let buckets mirror each other. And as you can see on the picture on the top left, these are sort of the two templates we offer. And once you specify which template you want to choose and the buckets you want to include for this multi-region access point, the console will then create a configure for you the replication rules and IRM roles. So you don't have to do a lot other than making a few clicks. You can also configure additional replication options such as RTC, replication time control, replication metrics and notification, and bidirectional sync. After you configure replication, a replication summary map is then displayed to show the result of the replication configuration across all of the buckets in a multi-region access point. This is very helpful if you associate many buckets with your multi-region access point and have complex replication rules between them. Visualizing them in a map will help you understand and check how your data is flowing. And then, if you also enable S3 replication metrics in your replication rule, you can also monitor your replication progress, including, once again, replication latency, bytes pending replication, and objects pending replications. So we offer a variety of ways for you to connect to S3 replicate multi-region access point. Cross-region VPC with no VPC pairing, on-premises, or internet-based. So just to recap, multi-region access point is a really exciting feature we recently launched that does two things for you. One, improve performance with dynamic request routing over the AWS backbone for better performance. Second, it simplifies the development of multi-region apps with a region-agnostic storage architecture. And lastly, we also want to remind you that when combined with S3 replications, you can have a managed multi-region storage solution. And now we're going to show you a demo of how to configure S3 replication and multi-region access point. And I will hand it back to Neha.
Okay, now let's go over the demo. We learned a lot recently, so let's see how it's actually done.
All right, we learned a lot just now. So let's do a demo and see how we can configure replication and MRAP. Here I am in my AWS Management Console and under Amazon S3 service. As you can see here, I have created a couple of buckets for today's demo. For first part of it, we will focus on these three buckets: reInvent 2021 demo replication source, reInvent 2021 demo replication destination 1, and destination 2. All three buckets are in different regions, as you can see here, and all three of them should be empty at this point. Let's go and quickly verify. Source is good. Destination 1 is good. And destination 2 is good as well. All right, let's go back to our source bucket. First, we'll check Properties tab here. As you can see, I have bucket versioning as enabled. You need to have both source and destination bucket versioning as enabled for replication to work. Next is default encryption. I'm keeping it as enabled, and I'm using Amazon S3 Master Key, or SSE S3 in this case. You can always go do edit and use either SSE S3 or AWS Key Management Service Key, or SSE KMS. Okay, next we are going to go to Management tab. Under replication rules, you can see there are no rules at this point. So let's go ahead and create a couple of rules here. The first rule I'm going to create is test rule. We will see how RTC works in this case. So I'm just going to put RTC in the name itself and 1. Yeah. Next here is choose a rule scope. So there are two options to choose a rule scope. One, we can limit the scope by using one or more filters. And filters as in filter by prefix, object types, or combination of both. Or second option is to apply to all the objects in the bucket. We're going to stick to first option here and we will limit the scope. The prefix I'm going to use for this rule is documents. Okay, moving on. For destination, we just saw 2 destination buckets. And we are going to use destination 1 for this rule. Okay, moving on. For IAM role, I'm going to create a new role in this case. I will leave encryption as is. I do not want to replicate objects using KMS, so I'll leave it untouched. For destination storage class, let's change the storage class for this one. So I do want to replicate objects to my destination bucket, but these objects will be infrequently accessed. So I want to optimize costs here. And that's why I'm going to pick standard IA. All right. Additional replication options. Here you see replication time control, which is what I'm going to select. As you notice, as soon as I selected RTC, replication metrics and notifications option was disabled. And this is because metrics and notifications come by default with RTC. Okay, we are not going to use delete marker or replica modification sync in this case. So let's go ahead and save it. Okay, I'm going to create another rule. Test rule. No RTC in this case, but we do want to try how delete marker works. And just number 2. Okay. And for choosing a rule scope, again, I'm going to limit the scope and the prefix I'm going to use is pictures. For destination, I will pick the other destination bucket here, destination 2. And again, create a new role in this case as well. Leaving encryption and destination storage class as is. What I'm going to do in this case is I'm not going to select RTC. So I will select my replication metrics and notifications. And because we do want to try how delete marker replication works, so I'm going to select delete marker replication and save. There is a third rule that I want to create, and we'll talk about it in a couple of minutes. The filter I'm going to use here is doc, D-O-C. And I'm going to again choose my destination 1 bucket. All right, leaving these as is. Again, I'm going to select RTC and save. All right, you can see all 3 rules created and their configuration in front of them. All right, now we created a couple of prefixes. So let's go ahead and create those folders. Going back to source bucket, I'm going to create first folder, documents. I will enable server-side encryption, and I'm going to use SSES3 for that. Create folder. Second folder I'm going to create is pictures. Again, I will enable server-side encryption and use SSES3. Third folder I'm going to create is doc. Same configuration. All right, all three folders exist. Let's go ahead and upload some objects. Uploaded some objects to documents. All success. Okay, let's go back. Pictures. Might take some time here. All done. All right, let's go back. Third folder is doc. All done. All right. So we uploaded objects to all three folders. So while the replication is happening in the background, let's go and talk about why I created the third rule. So I'm going to go to Management tab again. If you notice here, Test Rule 1 and Test Rule 3, these are two rules that specify filters with overlapping key prefixes, documents and doc. Both rules will be applied to objects under the prefix documents. In this case, Amazon S3 uses priority to determine which rule to apply. Higher the number, higher the priority. So between rule 1 and rule 3 will take precedence. Okay. Now let's go back to our source, our destination buckets, and see what's the progress of our application. Going to destination 1 first. Okay, we see both the folders replicated. Let's see what's the status of objects. Documents, great. All documents are replicated. Let's go to doc. Excellent, all docs are here as well. Now let's go to our other destination bucket, destination 2, which had pictures folder. Opening this, very nice. All of our pictures are replicated as well. Now let's go ahead and test how delete marker works. We used test rule 2 to test delete marker, which was with prefix pictures. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my source bucket, and from pictures folder, I'm going to delete some pictures. So let's delete these 4 pics. Pick 1, 2, 3, and 4. Confirming. Okay, so all 4 pictures are deleted from the source. What delete marker does is it makes sure that your destination bucket is in sync with your source bucket. So if an object is deleted from your source, it should be deleted from your destination bucket as well. Let's go and verify that. Okay, destination 2, pictures, refresh, and ta-da! There is no pick 1, pick 2, pick 3, or pick 4 here. All right, this looks good. Next, I want to talk about is metrics. So metrics are always shown against your source buckets. So we'll go to our source bucket again and metrics tab. So if you scroll here, there is replication metrics. And you can choose your replication rules. You can choose one of them or all of them. Takes a couple of minutes sometimes. Let's go to part 2 of the demo meanwhile. Multi-region access points. Clicking on multi-region access point, you can see I have already created one here called reinvent MRAP demo. Because it takes a couple of minutes, so that's why I have already created this beforehand. But I can show you how to create one. So you click on create multi-region access point, you give it a name, and then you add buckets. The 2 buckets we are going to use for today's demo are MRAP demo reinvent 1 and MRAP demo reinvent 2. After adding buckets, you leave all the options as is, and you should click on create. I'm going to cancel for now. Okay, once the status is ready here, you can go ahead and click on this and go to Replication tab. In this replication summary, you can only see buckets in these 2 different regions as of now. And if you scroll to Replication rules, you see there are no rules right now. So let's go ahead and create these rules. Remember in part 1 of the demo, we created these replication rules from those individual source and destination buckets. From MRAP, we only pick both the buckets in this console, and both the replication rules will be created from here itself. Let's see how. First option here is to choose a template. And there are 2 templates here. One, either you replicate objects from 1 or more source buckets to 1 or more destination buckets, which means this will be one-way replication. Or you replicate objects among all specified buckets. This is bidirectional replication. So let's stick to this option for today's demo. Then coming down here to buckets, I'm going to select both the buckets here. All right. For scope, I'm not going to use prefix in this demo, so I'm going to apply to all the objects in the bucket. All right, and in additional replication options, let's select RTC. Okay, create replication rules. Yeah, both are ready. Let's close this. Now you can see in summary that a bidirectional replication has been created. Okay, now let's go ahead and upload some objects in one of those 2 buckets. I'm going to just use MRAP demo reinvent 2. I don't need to create any folder here because it applies to all the objects in the bucket. So I'm going to just create it directly, upload them directly to the bucket. Upload. Might take a couple of seconds here. All right. Now let's go back to our other bucket and see replication happening. Okay. Some objects have been replicated. Yeah. Excellent. We see all the objects here. Now let's go back to MRAP. Under replication, if you scroll here to the bottom, you will see replication metrics. I'm going to just quickly change it to 1-day view. Okay, there are 3 graphs that are shown here: replication latency, bytes pending replication, and operations pending replication. You will see the spikes here for both the rules that were created through MRAP for the 2 buckets. So for example, in replication latency, you will see it varies between 9 seconds and 14 seconds for the 2 rules. You can also view the same in CloudWatch. I'm going to quickly show how it looks in CloudWatch and then come back. Yeah, like we just saw, the latency was about 9 seconds there for MRAP demo reinvent 1, and we can see the same here as well. Okay, closing this. So while we are checking metrics, let's go back and check the metrics for first part of the demo, where we created 3 replication rules. So I'm going to go back to the source bucket we used, which was reInvent 2021 demo replication source. And I'm going to go to metrics tab. Okay. Let's select all the 3 rows that we created there and display charts. All right. Similar to what we just saw, there are 3 graphs here: operations pending replication, replication latency, and bytes pending replication. Again, as you can see, let's say, for example, test rule RTC3. You can see there was a 10 count under operations pending replication. And for that same test rule RTC3, there is a replication latency for about 60 seconds. Also going and checking the bytes pending for that same test rule RTC3, we see about 33 MBs of bytes pending there.
Thanks, Neha, for the demo. To wrap it up, we're going to do a quick recap of what we discussed today. First, we talked about how to use Amazon S3 replications to satisfy compliance, improve resiliency, optimize performance, and maintain data under different ownerships. We also talked about how to use S3 replication time control for SLA-backed predictable replication. We talked about how to combine S3 replication with Amazon S3 multi-region access point, the new feature we launched, to simplify building multi-region application. We went through a demo of how to configure S3 replications and multi-region access point. So thank you so much for listening to us, and hope you learned something new today.